Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to show you how to upgrade your intercooler on your E90 BMW. Alright, let's get this unboxed. Comes with a couple of stickers from the manufacturer, VRSF. Comes with a stencil in case you want to paint the logo onto the front of the intercooler. You have T-bolt clamps and screws to mount the intercooler to your rad sport, couplers, and a charge pipe. This will lead up to the factory charge pipe that goes to your throttle body on the driver's side. Comes with this pipe, which is a nice addition to replace your factory plastic piece. Two different size T-bolt clamps, the ones that go to the intercooler and the ones that will connect to your factory charge pipes. And the heavy duty screws that will go into your stock location. Seems to be nicely packed. For anybody that's been following the channel for a while, you'll know that I've had an eBay intercooler on my car for a number of years. And I had been meaning to upgrade to something a little bit better. If you're wondering why I didn't go for the race version, the 7.5 inch stepped version, let me show you. And that would be the reason right there. I retrofitted active cruise control. I made a video about that if you guys haven't seen it. But with that, I can't go with the thicker intercooler. So you may be saying to yourself, well, this may not be a very big upgrade over the intercooler that I have on there now, but I think it will be, mostly because it seems to be better quality, a little more solid, better bar and plate design here. But the main thing is the step section should help act like a heat sink and be able to remove some heat as well. So it may seem trivial, but the reason I'm wanting to upgrade is I couldn't find a silicone coupler that would fit my eBay intercooler, and the one I have was damaged. It would take over a month. I've already tried to fix, it didn't hold up, and it just seems silly to keep trying to make that work. So I figured why not upgrade at the same time and get something a little bit better quality. So once we pull the eBay intercooler off the car, we'll compare them and I'll show you the difference between this tank and the one on there and why it can cause issues with the silicone being compressed, not being in its ideal position unless you trim it and mess with it. It's a mess. So let's get on to the installation now. Now, FYI, this version doesn't require any modification on your car. You shouldn't have to cut or anything. In my case, if I want to maintain active cruise control, I have to go with this. But if you were to go with the 7.5 inch race version, you got to do a lot of cutting. And this is going to be a straight install. It's good probably for 550, maybe 600 wheel anyway. So it's a nice solution if you guys don't want to be hacking up your whole support. Now, while it's technically possible to just jack the car up and take out the under tray and squeeze it in there, you risk bending fins and causing issues. I'm going to recommend, given how easy these bumpers come off these cars, to pull your front bumper if you're installing this. Even though it's not the 7.5 inch race version, you won't be encountering any clearance issues trying to wrestle against your bumper. In my case, even if that wasn't the case, I'd probably pull the bumper for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to pull the bumper off, and that way I can get to my couplers and not have to pull out the radiator cooling fan and all that just to be able to get my hands down in there to tighten the T-bolt clamps. To me, taking the bumper off makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to get busy with that now. So there's these 4 T30 Torx up at the top. Given this is not going to be a super long video, it would be a nice opportunity to update you on the oil cooler install and to update you on my M3 control arms. I got my alignment done. So to start with, we can look at the oil cooler after installing it, since we're gonna have the bumper off. But the lines that go up to the oil filter housing are completely bone dry and leak free, no issues. So far those lines haven't given me any issues. Some people reported that they did get leaks on them, but I'm good so far. Now with regards to the M3 control arms, without an alignment, the car was just all over the road. It was a mess, undrivable. You have to take it straight to an alignment if you're gonna preserve your tires at all or be able to get down the road safely. The biggest difference I can report regarding the control arms is the fact that the car has crazy turn-in. When you lean into a corner, the steering feel is improved. It made a big difference. Some people were complaining about bump steer. I would say after the alignment, they literally did a perfect alignment. I didn't really notice that. But before the alignment, it was a mess, and yes, it would bump steer. So I think maybe if your alignment is off, you may get some bump steer. But I don't have super wide tires on the front of my car. Now, I have active steering on this car. It's kind of a rare option. It was very expensive for its time. It was like 1,700 bucks, I believe, back in the day. So I don't think it was very popular, but that does give you a very immediate turn-in just from the factory, but it does sacrifice some feel. I would say quite a bit of feel. The steering is light compared to your standard E90, but if you get used to it in around town maneuvering, it's really great. If you notice my M340i in the background, it's a pretty good benchmark with regards to immediate turn-in. It's got a really quick rack and it can dart all over the road as you see fit. Steering feel is so pretty good for electric, I would say, but that car can change lanes in the blink of an eye and not really even break a sweat. The E90 didn't get to that level, but with these control arms, it got a lot better. It felt more stable in changing lanes and in leaning into a corner. As this is still hydraulic based, you get more feedback through the wheel. So depending on your tire choice, it didn't really sacrifice comfort too much. I would recommend it, but you have to get a really good alignment. I asked them to go as far as they could go. They could achieve 1.3 at the front. I don't have camber plates or anything like that. Seems to be a good compromise. So I would recommend them, especially as general maintenance for the people that are looking for an update. So I just had my wheel cranked over. You have a couple 8mm that would go from here. You got to pull the fender liner back a bit. Mine is actually busted, so it comes right out. But yeah, if you release the tension on them, you may be able to unclip it from the bracket and pull it out like I just did. But there's two 8mm. And I just took out one 8mm from up here and the two 8mm that are over here to be able to get some slack on the fender liner, push it out of the way to be able to get to these. Now I'm going to head underneath the car and remove all the under tray bolts. There's quite a few of them, and set that down. I had to disconnect the fog lights, and beyond that, came right out. Not a big deal at all. I'm going to lower the camera a bit, that way you get to see me going after the intercooler bolts. I have clear access to 2 T-bolt clamps on my aftermarket intercooler. So I just unscrewed the 2 screws on each side, T25. We can talk about the oil cooler really quickly. 0 leaks at all, completely bone dry. It was hassle-free. So far, so good. Maybe line routing is important to make sure that they're not kinked or anything, but I've had no issues with the oil cooler, and I'm happy to see that. I'm just reaching in from here to unscrew one of the T-bolt clamps by the charge pad. So as you can see on the VRSF intercooler here, the end tanks are cast, they're bigger, and they're angled appropriately. You're not relying on the coupler to do any special routing, which could cause deformation. If you look at this coupler, it's got quite the shape to it, and then it can easily just get kinked like that when you put everything in the car. And here's the bend that gave me a problem. I had to cut it to a specific length because I had silicone outlets and it was too long and it was just getting crushed before. And then I switched to metal outlets and it was not long enough to reach to where it needed to be. So it's got this funny shape to it. It's got like a 60-degree bend here and then a 30-degree bend here. And I couldn't find that anywhere. It would take me a month. I searched for a couple hours and got fed up. I'm like, this is stupid. And then I've always noticed every time you put it in the car, even if you cut this short and get the length perfectly, it gets crushed like that, and then when it would only blow up when it's full of boost. So it's not a good design, and I think this is a knockoff of another company. I forgot the name of it. You know, of course, it's a Chinese knockoff. They discontinued it probably because this design wasn't ideal. You shouldn't use the couplers to make those custom shapes because they easily get compressed and they're not ideal. So that's why I'm ditching this. Overall, this intercooler did serve me well over the years. It was a good upgrade over stock, and it actually handled 500 plus wheel horsepower. Didn't really get super heat soaked. Great value for your money, but it has its flaws. As you can see, these end tanks here, the diameter of this is quite small, and that coupler design is not ideal. Versus these, they're larger, and then you got your angle set by the cast aluminum. The coupler itself is just straight. So we got 2.15 inches. 2.7 inches. Big difference. That should help with flow. So this area is a little bit taller than you would like. It kind of gets butted up against there, and then you kind of have to crank these down, and then with time and going over bumps on the road, they kind of bent and I had to straighten them back up. This is 6 inches tall and this is 5.6 inches tall. It just gives you that extra clearance to fit in there without rubbing up against anything or butting up against anything. Another annoying thing was getting the fan shroud into these little pegs here. They're relatively narrow, and these are quite wide, which is nice. So as you can see, you got more meat here, you got more area to do work, and should help with cooling. It's an upgrade. So I would recommend this intercooler over the eBay intercooler that I used for years. It did serve me quite well for the money if you're on a budget, but I think this is a better choice for the power levels I'm making. Stage 2 Plus upgraded turbos, good design, and it's what I'd recommend because it just fits in there without a ton of cutting. Unless you're single turbo making huge power, this should get the job done. So I'll put a link in the description if you guys are interested in purchasing this. And a lot of you guys have asked me over the years, what do I think of that eBay intercooler? Great for the money. The couplers were just So annoying every time I had to deal with them, and I'm done with that. So, and also I like the idea that we're upgrading the factory charge pipe. I had to pull this all the way out, it gets in the way, so pull it off all the way first. I was able to route the pipe up. We're gonna get the coupler set up on the intercooler to start with. I put a little bit of silicone spray in here. Don't use a lot because you don't want to risk it slipping off, but this lip is pretty pronounced, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. You don't have to worry about the orientation of this one. I can clamp this one right down. And this side I can't really crank down on until I get it in the car because that can change the angle of it. So I'll just leave it loose. Here's a look at the heavy duty screws that come with it. Have them ready with you. Okay, so in hindsight, you should leave that lower coupler loose so that you can angle it appropriately to get it on at least, and then eventually you'll straighten it back out. But it'll be too stiff and you won't be able to get that tube on from your outlets to your inlet for the intercooler. I tightened up these screws, got it all the way up without it hitting anything. It's not interfering in any way, even with my active cruise sensor, so I'm good there. Okay, so for this side, you're gonna wanna assemble the coupler onto the pipe before you shove it up into the car. Otherwise, you won't be able to tighten this clamp inside the car. So to get your angle, just reference your old charge pipe. If you still have your OEM charge pipe, you can copy it. Otherwise, even if you've done an aftermarket intercooler, you can look at the orientation and copy it. So I have it oriented properly now. To go back on the car, I'm going to tighten this before inserting it into the car. I tightened up the connections here and down below and there and down below, so we're ready to put the bumper back on. I also have another update regarding the crank seal plate that I installed. It was noisy for about maybe 10 minutes of driving and then it went completely silent, so at least that issue resolved itself. Alright guys, that'll conclude this video. So if I was to do it again, I would just buy a quality intercooler rather than what I bought a couple years ago for less than $200. If this is the first video you're catching on mine, please consider subscribing. I do upload regularly. Thanks for watching.